but also that my show had value, and that that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I try not to cry on TV. And I think this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize.
Times are officially changing, everybody. Joy Reid is out at MSNBC. MSNBC as a network is having huge financial problems. She had absolutely terrible ratings. And as you just heard from Joy Reid, it's so hurtful, so harmful, so dangerous because she had a very important show and she needs to cry about it. Now, of course, nobody in reality is crying on behalf of Joy Reid. Her viewership on her MSNBC show is down, even compared to what you would expect from a cable host, since most people are not watching TV anymore. And it just makes sense now that the company that owns MSNBC is looking to spin it off into its own channel for them to make dramatic cutbacks, especially on people who are not producing a return on the investment. And if anybody at MSNBC deserves this more, I haven't found the person, because Joy Reid is the absolute worst. This is somebody who attacked the Petito family because their daughter was white when she was missing, and people were interested in the case, and this was just missing white woman syndrome.
If you've been watching the news for the past few days or on Twitter or TikTok, you're probably familiar with the name Gabby Petito, the 22-year-old aspiring social media influencer who was reported missing after her fiance returned from their van life excursion without her. On Sunday, human remains believed to be Petito's were found in a national park in Wyoming. An autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow to confirm the identity. Now, it goes without saying that no family should ever have to endure that kind of pain, and the Petito family certainly deserve answers and justice. But the way this story has captivated the nation has many wondering, why not the same media attention when people of color go missing? Well, the answer actually has a name: missing white woman syndrome.
By the way, something so nasty and pernicious that apparently at the end of the Gabby Petito Netflix documentary, the family of Gabby Petito, both sides, her mother's side and the stepfather and the father and the stepmother, had to pay lip service to the fact that it was evil, white, and racist for people to be interested in the case of their daughter, who, by the way, was ultimately ended up getting murdered. So essentially they had to apologize for attention that their daughter received, due in part to people like Joy Reid, who thought, you know what, your kid's missing, your kid turned out to be murdered. The real story in this case is evil white racism. Shut up, you evil white racist. Well, guess what, Joy Reid? You can shut up. Guess what, Joy Reid? You're gone. Guess what, Joy Reid? The free ride, the big paycheck, it's over. It's done with. Your band of crappy content is gonna have to make do somewhere else, and unfortunately for you, the only people who are going to subsidize that were over at MSNBC, and they just pulled the plug.
The race lady. Why would it call me that? Is this really about me fixating on race, or is it about you fixating on race?
But Donald Trump wants to never let black and brown folk up off the mat. It's evident what they mean by DEI, right? Why not just say what you mean? You can't stand black people. We get it. You've been heard.
Are you committed to naming a black woman as your vice presidential running mate?
They wanted to go after the brown people, too, because, of course, that is their other target. Not fashionable to be openly racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. Only the white Christian men may have the things. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas.
Joy.
If you are black plus anything else, you are black.
Violent white nationalism that today threatens our national security.
Now, look, we're going to get into this. We're going to break this down. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay. I've been talking to so many people, but I've been through every emotion from, anger, rage, disappointment, hurt, feeling that, guilt, that I let my team lose their jobs. But in the end, where I really land and where I've landed on today is just gratitude. Just pure gratitude.
So first things first, for those of you who are worried about the production staff associated with the Reid Report, to the extent that those people can function in a TV station, I'm actually happy to report that they have been given the option to reapply for their jobs, to which they will be assessed, and if they are qualified, they will return to employment, according to MSNBC, at MSNBC. So in terms of her staff and all that, the everyday people who work behind the scenes, who, move the cameras and whatnot, I do feel bad for them, because it always sucks when you lose your job, but the fact of the matter is people like Joy Reid pushed the vaccine mandate, backed Joe Biden with the vaccine mandate, and the whole point of that was you're either going to take this shot or you're going to lose your job, and she was perfectly fine with that. I don't feel bad for her at all. I don't have any particular pleasure in her pain, although she is deserving of it. I'm just not the kind of person that was all that invested in Joy Reid in that way that I'm happy for her to be fired. In fact, for me, from my perspective, having somebody like this on MSNBC,
we do have a fascist groundswell in parts of this country, mainly among white men, let's be clear.
I mean, you're also a white guy. Are you saying the we is white folks need more kids?
is a good go-to for me to make commentary about, because she's almost always going to have an awful, terrible, and anti-white take that I can present to you guys out there in the audience. So in that regard, this actually does hurt the people who don't like Joy Reid the most. That being said, let us see the more stuff that she's going to put forward.
But also that my show had value, and that, I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And I think this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize. And then it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you.
So two things. One, obviously that is the clip that I put up in the open of this video. And two, the show did not have value. What she was doing absolutely was worthless. Let's be clear about that. That's why MSNBC has given her the shaft, has told her to pack up her desk and get the hell out. Don't let the door hit you on your way out, because obviously the Readout was one of the worst shows on all of cable television. And to be clear, cable news is pretty bad. So that is a good achievement for her to have in that regard. In fact, the only way that Joy Reid's The Readout had any value at all whatsoever was to people like me who make response videos to her, and definitely 100% not to MSNBC. And I want to be clear about something. It should have been that MSNBC, like after the 2016 election, went up in ratings after Trump ended up winning. That's exactly what happened for them, and that's exactly what happened over at CNN. However, because these people lied so much about Kamala Harris's chances of winning, because they pumped her up so much, because Joy Reid called everyone and anyone who refused to vote for her evil, white, and racist, anti-black woman, a sexist as well, people have not returned to these different various shows. In fact, they brought Rachel Maddow's corpse out from the one show a week that she was doing. They're forcing her to do a show regularly, at least for the first 100 days or so of Trump's presidency, and the reason why they're doing that is because they were hoping to capitalize on the increased ratings with their best host, but the thing is, the ratings are just not there. Their shows cannot be supported, and now that you have Comcast trying to get rid of MSNBC, trying to toss it in the dustbin of history, they just don't have the ability to sell this product when it has crazy contracts like Joy Reid's contract attached. And by the way, I just want to point out, when you get fired from these local news stations, it's not like you guys out there in the audience getting fired, where maybe you get a severance if you're lucky, but most of the time, you're stuck having to figure it out. Joy Reid is probably going to get the payout of her salary. I think she makes about $7 million a year, which means that at MSNBC, she was overpaid by approximately $7 million. Honestly, she might have been overpaid by $8 million in that she's actually worth negative $1 million to MSNBC, but I have not seen the actual numbers myself to verify this. But yeah, that's where we're at with Joy Reid. She's still going to get her payment. There's no reason to feel bad for her, even though her show is absolutely terrible, and it absolutely makes sense to jettison her.
Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed.
So this always happens when somebody gets fired from a network. The claim is that they were fired because they just spoke their mind. The claim is that they were fired because they couldn't be silenced and they just didn't fit into the corporate structure. Now, I don't know exactly how long Joy Reid was at MSNBC, but I think it was well over a decade. MSNBC also employed people like Al Sharpton and a bunch of other anti-white, pro-Black Lives Matter hosts like Joy Reid who believe all the same things, not to mention, in addition to that, that all the white hosts on MSNBC also suckled on the teat of the BLM movement and all these different various social movements. So the idea that she was speaking out or going against the grain is absurd in every possible way. She is standard fare at MSNBC. Again, all of these are luxury beliefs of the wealthy elite, and that's how she presented herself. I remember when Ketanji Brown Jackson was being confirmed to the Supreme Court under the Biden administration, and what we found out is that Joy Reid went to Princeton with Ketanji Brown Jackson. She knew her personally. The idea that she's some advocate or she knows how it is for all these innocent Baba Angel poor black bebes that are being murdered by the police for no reason at all whatsoever is absurd. It's insane. She's obviously over-exaggerating, but the next clip is probably the chef's kiss of how out of touch this woman actually is.
Or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just black folks.
Joy Reid is taking credit for exposing the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted in the United States of America during in and around the COVID period. Well, here's the thing, Joy. You and everybody else at MSNBC specifically went out of your way to obfuscate what was actually happening, to cover up what was actually happening, because the implication, or sometimes what was outright stated by all of your coverage of attacks on Asian people, were that the attacks were coming from white people / Trump supporters, but specifically white Trump supporters, when in reality, what we ended up discovering by examining the cases ourselves, by looking at the videos, is that all the attacks on elderly people, the overwhelming majority of them, all the attacks on Asian people that were racially motivated and whatnot, were committed by black people. And by the way, a bunch of these attacks weren't even anti-Asian hate crimes. They were robberies and ordinary crimes that black people commit against Asian people that were suddenly being counted for the purposes of smearing Trump and smearing white people as anti-Asian hate. So you probably did more than any other host at MSNBC to lie about this, to not address the problem, to basically throw Asians to the wolves, while at the same time using their victimization at the hands of black criminals that you were protecting in order to attack your political opponents. Very few people were worse on this issue than Joy Reid. Very few people were more willing to throw actual victims of crimes that were Asian under the bus and then use their victimization as a method to racially target another group that had basically nothing to do with it than Joy Reid. So yeah, you're disgusting. The fact that you went hard on the narrative, again, does not show us anything about you doing a good job at MSNBC. You're talking about lying to people. You're still lying to people right now.
Or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them. Or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country.
Now look, the meltdown from Joy Reid ends up continuing in that particular clip. I'll link the Twitter video in the description of this video if you want to check it out for yourself. But beyond Joy Reid herself, it actually continued with Rachel Maddow, who decided in the middle of her show that she was going to talk about how very, very bad it was for MSNBC to become the channel of evil white racists. No, I'm not kidding about this. Rachel Maddow decided to imply that the firing of Joy Reid was racially motivated.
An even bigger programming change is at 7 p.m. Eastern, where Joy Reid's show, The Readout, ended tonight. And Joy is not taking a different job in the network. She is leaving the network altogether. And that is very, very, very hard to take.
So first of all, right off the top, Rachel Maddow, very, very, very upset about Joy Reid's firing. And I want to make something clear because she tries to use some flowery language about how Joy is leaving the network. And first of all, I just want to point out that Joy, the emotion, is actually coming to the network because nobody at that network, besides these elitist hosts, probably enjoyed working with her. That being said, she's being fired fired. She's being kicked out. She's not deciding to go her separate ways with MSNBC. MSNBC is like, listen, we don't want you here. Joy Reid's like, no, please keep paying me money for no ratings. And they're like, no, get out. We've already changed the locks in your office. So let's be clear. Rachel Maddow is kind of sugarcoating this. Joy Reid was 100% fired by MSNBC. Let go by MSNBC. It is not a mutual thing. It is not, oh, it's not you, it's me. It's definitely her. She's gone.
I am 51 years old. I have been gainfully employed since I was 12. And I have had so many different kinds of jobs, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But in all of the jobs I have had, in all of the years I have been alive, there is no colleague for whom I have had more affection and more respect than Joy Reid. I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door.
Now, again, there goes Rachel Maddow with the confusing language. She's not being let walk out the door. She's being forced through the door. They called security. They said, you need to leave. She's like, whoa, just give me a second. And they're like, no, right now, get the hell out of our studio. Never come back. Turn in your gun and your badge. You're on desk duty for the rest of your life, as long as that desk duty, of course, is in your home, because you can't stay here.
I will tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Fang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
So there you go. There it is. Exactly what you would expect from these left-wing progressives, which is the accusation, or as the super mayor would say, the allegation.
False allegations and not facts.
Of evil white racism. Why was Joy Reid fired? It's not because her ratings at the 7 p.m. slot are absolutely horrific. Again, even in the context of cable news ratings overall dropping significantly, it's not because even after Trump being elected, Joy Reid ended up, guess what? Not benefiting from the Trump bump that we saw and expected from the time that he won in 2016 and the 2017 ratings that followed. It's because of evil white racism. Shut up with your evil white racism. And I will also point out for everybody out there in the audience that Al Sharpton is at MSNBC. Al Sharpton was able to keep his show, even though without disclosing the fact that he received donations from the Kamala Harris campaign totaling $500,000 to his National Action Network. He then gave her an interview on the network, again, without at all disclosing it. No journalistic integrity or anything of the sort. Al Sharpton is every bit the race hustler that Joy Reid is, yet we're seeing Joy Reid get the boot, get kicked out because her primetime show is absolutely terrible. And Rachel Maddow's like, well, guess what? We only have 2 non-white hosts in primetime, and it's just so sad that that is the case. It must be evil white racism. It's indefensible, and I don't defend it.
And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
Oh my God, what a terrible network that MSNBC is, and I'm just hoping that some of the bean counters over at MSNBC realize that Rachel Maddow makes way too much money, and they decide to give her the boot from the network because she is the face of MSNBC for sure. That being said, that face is not very pretty, and this is not a very successful network. So yeah, Joy Reid, absolute garbage in every possible way. Rachel Maddow's defense of her, absolute nonsense in every possible way, but it goes on because apparently she had her on as a guest so that they could have a little bit of a cry session because, oh my God, what is Joy Reid gonna do as a Ivy League educated multimillionaire that's better off than the vast majority of people who, even though she's being fired, is likely going to be paid out the rest of her contract?
History, your ability, your political acumen. Nicole Wallace, my good sister, tell me what you, your brilliant self, believe people can do.
Well, I'm going to break the rules the way Rachel broke the rules and tell you that I love you. That the happiest times I've had, not just at MSNBC, but ever being on television, have been sitting next to the two of you. No offense, Lawrence. We love having you there, too.
We love Lawrence.
And that I think that I thought that things like that on TV couldn't be real, but that the friendships that have sustained me have been with both of you. And I am, it's like losing a limb, the thought of doing those nights without you. Your strength and your fearlessness is the answer to the question I think you're getting at with both of us. And I think that...
So yeah, right there you have Joy Reid. I believe this was her last show. She was given the Monday hour, and you have all these different hosts that join her as guests, and they're like, your strength and your willingness to stand up to the establishment and parrot each and every one of their talking points in the exact way that anybody would say them at MSNBC is just so stunning, so brave, and beautiful. And the fact that you add in on top of that additional anti-white racism, additional anti-white hatred is something that I just respect oh so much. Please, Joy Reid, don't ever leave MSNBC, even though today is your last show. And again, security is standing on the side waiting to toss you out after you do your ridiculous performance.
And your departure is despair. And the only thing that chips away at that for me is that despair is the autocrat's tool. It's their most effective weapon. It costs nothing. It's easy to deploy. It's contagious. And then it puts in motion all the actions they want: hopelessness, isolation, exasperation, giving up. Yeah. And so the only reason I will not wallow in what I feel about you leaving is because I think that's what they want.
Look, I have to say, I've heard some ridiculous stuff in my time, but the idea that the nebulous they wants to cause despair and whatnot in the left-wing pro-democracy side, and that's the autocratic tool, and the way that they did that was firing a host that had almost no viewership, is absurd. It's ridiculous. We never actually talk about how crazy and conspiratorial even the mainstream left actually is, but Joy Reid was actually pushing the conspiracy theory that Trump was not actually shot on July 13th of 2024 when the attempted assassination happened, and on video, and by the way, backed up by high definition footage, you can actually see the bullets whizzing by. She was promoting those conspiracy theories on MSNBC. Now we're hearing about the nebulous they that is trying to sow despair in the democracy coalition as a method of maintaining their autocracy or whatever. Who the hell cares? They're just spazzing out, having this emotional meltdown. And by the way, I'm totally 100% here for it. And this is somebody who does not have joy in and of itself of Joy Reid being fired from MSNBC. Again, from a professional standpoint, it benefits me to be able to point to crazy things she says, put them in videos for you, for your entertainment. I might actually lose money off her being fired because the very few people who gain value from Joy Reid being on MSNBC are the ones who make fun of her being on MSNBC. So when that's not the case, that ends up hurting us. That being said, this is ridiculous.
I think that turning this over to the country and saying, you may think this is what you wanted, but this is not who we are.
Yeah, indeed. And I think people are getting there.
So this makes me laugh for a number of reasons. First and foremost, again, it's just empty platitudes. It's all this whining about Joy Reid being fired, and she's trying to attach this to the broader mood and temperature of the country, and included in that is another platitude that is pushed on a society by the left wing, which is, this is not who we are. This is really not what we're all about. And I don't think these people really get it. I don't think they understand that they are so disconnected from the average man that if they actually talk to them, if they actually were to engage in conversation, it would be borderline impossible for them to understand one another, because these people operate with all that flowery, where you don't actually say what you mean type of language, and regular ordinary people speak directly. They're not into all these fringe issues that are being pushed by the radical left wing. But of course, I'm going to leave this here. I know that Trump released a lengthy statement making fun of Joy Reid from being booted off the air. The statement is hilarious. You guys can check it out for yourself, and it's probably due to the fact that Joy Reid was trying to steal the evil orange man's hairstyle. But as of right now, I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Joy Reid getting tossed out, getting booted. Till next time.